Hello and welcome to the MHG podcast. As usual, life can be a little bit miserable and a little bit dark. Some weeks especially can feel like that. So we're here to try and bring you as much light and as much joy as we possibly can. I will say straight up, it's been a tough week for both me and Stu. We won't go into details today, maybe a little bit down the line. But aside from everything that's going on, Stu, how are you?
Not too bad in terms of what's going on game-wise. You know, I'm enjoying my games, and I think it's interesting when you get towards the end of a year and you start looking back at what you've played and you start deciding, what's going to be in my best of lists and what has been disappointing me. And I've been kind of cheered on the whole that I've played a lot of stuff that I've really enjoyed. And one of the best things is the variety of stuff I've been playing. And I've not it's been a real help because I've had a really tough year in some of the months. And it's been a real help because having that constant gaming thing in the background where I can always loop up with it has been, as usual, has been a real pleasure. And this year has been more so than a lot of years, to be honest.
Yeah, I think especially if you go back to the indie scene, you look at the indie titles especially, there's been so many good games. It actually becomes difficult to start looking at what is your actual standout number one. I'm already looking at the end of the year going, I don't know if I'm going to have a number one. I just don't think I've got an outright number one because there's just too many to choose from.
Yeah.
So on that, and it's been a great distraction. That's one thing games continue to bring you is they are a great distraction from life.
Yeah.
Which, to go a bit melancholy for a second, if you can find that distraction, do so. If you can find that thing that brings you happiness even when it's dark, take it. Because life's too short, life's difficult, and it's there. I know I broke, like, to give you a quick example before we move on, I did break one of my own rules recently. Because I needed some fun. I looked at games I knew I have always had fun with, and I bought the Trial series because they was really cheap, and I know they're Ubisoft, but I was like, I love those games. I know how much joy they've brought me in the past. So I mean, fuck it. My own joy is more important to me at the moment than my morals towards Ubisoft. Because I think sometimes you do just have to participate in capitalism because it's there.
Yeah, I mean, we're stuck in this system. We do our best, but there's no hard and fast rules. Everyone's just muddling along, and if you know it's going to help you and you know it's not directly going to hurt somebody, then why not? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But apologies to no one because I know hopefully there's some royalties, but. I did actually try and look to pirate them, but it was a pain in the arse. So I mean, I think it cost me £8 in total for everything. So I was like, that's not even gonna buy some penny sweets. So I don't think I'm doing that much to sort of like give money to the CEOs. But oh god, those Trials games, I love them.
Yeah, you do, don't you? Yeah, it's great when you connect with things like that. Yeah, I love it.
Talking of connecting with things, Stu, video games, Stu, and that's one of my worst segues, but hey, that's all I've got in me this week. What have you been playing?
Well, I've been playing a really big one this week, a huge one, and I don't know actually whether it's classed as that in the wider society. I'd love to see sales figures, but I've been playing Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, which is the new one on the Switch.
Oh yeah, good old like traditional young white man video game protagonist. Yes, go on, excellent. I can't wait to hear about
precisely. This. One great thing about it is that there's lots of in jokes about that. Like, you'll do something for somebody and they'll be like, oh, great, thank you for rescuing me, young man. And then they'll look again and be like, oh, you're not the character I was expecting, sort of thing. It's some good cheeky nods to it. And the fact that you've been doing the rescuing as Zelda and not Link is constantly surprising to everybody in the world, which is, it's really good. It's really clever. And I mean, it's I suppose you'd think of it as a a slightly lesser Zelda game. I don't know if that's fair, but it's not one of the big, gigantic Tears of the Kingdom sized games. It's one of the kind of the Grezzo offshoot ones. So you're thinking like the locomotive one, whatever that was called, or the Minish Cap kind of size. And it uses the same game engine as Link's Awakening remake from a few years back. Which we'll come to in a minute. So you take on the character of this, I don't know, this new person on the scene, Zelda, and instead of walking around whacking things with your sword and blocking with your shield, you manipulate items in the environment. And the way that you do it is you kind of have this magic staff type thing, and you go around tapping certain objects that are lit so that you can tap them, and then you learn how to reproduce them, and you can only reproduce a certain number at a time, obviously, otherwise you'd be a god. You kind of they spread over everything. And if you think about your inventory from Breath of the Wild, it's kind of similar to that. You end up with a huge stack of stuff. So you got breakable pots, you've got beds, you've got torches, you've got enemies and that sort of thing. You've got inanimate objects like rocks. You got all sorts. You can just get everything pretty much. Anything that's not nailed down, and even some of the nailed down stuff. And you go around and you reproduce these to solve the puzzles. And the game, the way that the maps are laid out and the dungeons, the overworld and the dungeons, is just exactly like it would be in a Link-focused game. And the puzzles are pretty much the same as well. And so instead of you getting like a magical ocarina or, the kind of Cupholder of Destiny or, whatever, you use what you've already collected in the environment as cleverly as you can to get past the puzzles. And so you do that, go around and you have, boss fights. So it's like, well, how do you compete in boss fights? Well, you have to manifest the right things. You have some inanimate or semi-animate objects that you can use to trigger things in the environment that damage the boss.
Wait, is semi-animate a word, or have you just popped that in there? I think
I've probably just completely made that one up myself.
I like it. I like it.
I quite like it too. It's sticking with me, that one. Or you can... you do have an ability to change into a kind of copy of Link and hit things with your sword, but that only lasts for a very, very brief time, especially early game. So you can't just rely on it. You also have to manifest these the enemies that you've beaten and get them to attack for you, and they all have different attack patterns. They're all good against fire, earth, wind, whatever, or they can't cope with water, or they can cope very well in water. So it all plays very cleverly into how you defeat the bosses. And the map is really huge, and there's lots of different characters, and there's all the sorts of things you'd expect to see, like the Gerudos and the Zoras and all of that, and very, very cutely rendered. So it plays very, very well and very cleverly, and it's really nice when you feel there's this constant feeling of, I've managed to kind of break the game by doing this, and I feel like I've done it too soon, too early. That's great, but you've probably not. It's just part of the design, which is really nice, because you're constantly getting this little thrill of kind of game, what you feel is game breaking but isn't really, but you've cleverly worked something out. And which is a kind of double-edged master sword, if you'll forgive me.
Hey.
Because there's kind of, when you get games like this, there aren't very many of them, but physics-based and using items in the environment and stuff via a kind of grippy thing, kind of like you do in Half-Life 2, you have this kind of spectrum of how you use things, and it's either it's kind of completely not needed, but fun. So the bits in Half-Life 2 where you pick up a blade and throw it at a zombie rather than use your gun. It's not necessary, but it's fun. Then there's the bits where you got to use it for a seesaw trap, or seesaw thing, and that's necessary, but there might be another way around it, but probably not. And then there's you absolutely have to use what you have, and this is the only way to do it. And it kind of the Zelda game kind of falls under a couple of different categories with that. So you can just sort of brute force it with items that aren't supposed to be used that way, which is kind of good. But there are more complex puzzles where you get to the end of it and you go, I think that was a bit easier than it should have been because I've got so many different tools that they've not designed it to be only completed in one way, which is kind of blessing and a curse. It's really strange. It's like, yeah, it's lovely that I can use, the first item I got, which is like a bed, to just create a bridge made of beds and get across to this thing. But I think it was probably would have been better if I had to use my brain and do something a bit more sophisticated.
Yeah.
And then there are some times where it's a little bit obscure and you're like, I'm not sure I even have the right tools for this. And it's a bit of a struggle. And they don't really get it wrong. And it errs on the side of simple rather than difficult most of the time. But I think what I'm trying to say is it never gets to that state of, oh, this is genius. Oh, yeah, obviously you're supposed to use this and this is in everyone's common arsenal sort of thing. And, oh, yeah, that's brilliant. I've not had that feeling yet because I've had a bit of, well, yeah, I've done that, but that's obvious. And I've done that, but, oh, I could have used anything to do that kind of thing. So it works and it's fun, but it's not genius. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the only other thing to mention, so technically it's terrible. It's constantly juddering. The screen constantly judders because the frame rate's not locked and the capability of the Switch is just not there properly. And it's worse than it was in Link's Awakening even. And this is playing it handheld, and it's supposed to be even worse in docked. And they could have just locked it to 30 frames per second and it would have solved a lot of those issues, but they haven't. And it's constantly juddering. And I get annoyed at genuinely properly annoyed at people's feedback going, oh, but it's a Zelda game. It's about the gameplay. The technical stuff doesn't matter. I can put up with this, blah, 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 blah. And these are the same people who, when it gets released on a later console, like a later Nintendo console, or if the Switch 2 is backwards compatible and it runs completely smoothly, they'd be like, yeah, this is the game it was always meant to be. They've ironed out all the problems. All that technical jank that they had in the past has gone. Yeah. And it's like, you can't have it both ways. Stop having your recency bias. Stop having your sunk cost fallacy of, oh, yeah, just because I've paid money for it, I've got to compliment the game. Just be honest and say, yeah, technically it's a bit of a mess. And technically it is a bit of a mess. But thankfully that's not halting my enjoyment too much. So, yeah, I mean,
just on that very quickly, Stu, if you're one of the lucky ones and you've still got an up-to-date version of Ryujinx, which Nintendo have now shut down, so if you haven't got Ryujinx, you're unfortunately out of luck. It's locked at 60 frames per second and can push to 120 frames per second.
Yeah, so I hear. No, I haven't bothered with any of the emulation for years, unfortunately.
No, I've not done this one because I've not bought the game or anything. So again, I've always said for Switch stuff, I've always just emulated stuff I've bought or I've wanted to have a little look at before I decide if I'm going to buy it. But yeah, this runs absolutely perfectly on emulation, so no wonder Nintendo are desperate to shut it down if they can't get their own games to run on their own systems well. Yeah,
it frustrates me a little bit because you can hand over to a second party like Grezzo and go, do the thing because you're good at designing games. But when you're a company like Nintendo who are known for getting the best out of their hardware, running flawlessly, absolutely beautiful, it mars that reputation a little bit, especially as it's the second game now to have done that. So there's not really an excuse for it, to be honest. And it's great that it can be done on emulation, but like you say, it does show it up. It just show them up. It's not something that should have to happen. But anyway, it's a really good game. I would recommend it to anybody who likes Zelda adventures. Definitely. It's got its flaws, but they're not major flaws. I would argue the technical flaws are worse than any of the gameplay ones. But again, they're not game breaking. Maybe wait if you're not that bothered. Wait for a version that runs flawlessly. But, for now, if you're into it, go for it because it's a good one.
Cool. I don't know. That series might take off. You never know.
Who knows? I would love to see more Zelda stuff, definitely. More mainline Zelda games, as in, she's the main character, not Link.
Yeah, do you reckon it's the longest series of anything where the title character hasn't actually been the main protagonist?
Well, it would be, except I think there was was it a 3DO game or something where...
Don't count. That don't count.
Yeah.
No, that don't count.
Yeah, definitely in what you'd consider the main series,
Yeah. The ones where people, like, even Nintendo go, I don't know, what?
yeah.
Yeah, they don't count.
No, I think you're right. I think from that perspective, definitely.
Yeah, I'm glad she's finally got her own game. It's good. And it's also good. I hate this, and I don't mean this term. This is not coming from me. It's not a game for girls, which the Mario tried to do a couple of times with Princess Peach and stuff like that. It was a game for girls, quote unquote.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just, well, this is a different way of doing it, and I do like that.
Yeah.
The way that with all their games that have got a long running sort of series, Nintendo pick out little bits of the successes of other games that weren't the main focus and turn those things into the main focus of the game. Or they turn things on their head, but like everything in it is, everything that they do in these sequels tends to be a really good way to evolve the games, because obviously gamers are notoriously difficult to please, if not impossible to please. And if you give them something completely new, they balk at it. And if you give them what they had before, they balk at it. And with Zelda, I think, and most of their games, they really tread that line very, very well. And like, even though like Mario Galaxy is very different from like 3D World, they're still recognisably in the same series and carry that DNA through. And this is the same, that picking out of inventory and going, oh, tell you what, why couldn't we just use this massive inventory in a completely different way, but in one that makes sense in the Zelda world? And they've done it, it's very clever, very clever.
Excellent. Right, moving on to a well-established series that everyone knows. I've got one now that is a game that has just totally been my comfort game for the last couple of weeks when I've needed it. It's Satisfactory. I spoke briefly 2 weeks ago about it, was it? I think. And I've just been non-stop on it. So essentially what Satisfactory is a first-person, open-world factory building game. There's a story to it. So the idea is you kind of land on this alien planet, and your job is to research and mine and stuff like that so that you can create essentially a massive ecosystem while you're there. There's various flora and fauna there, some which is aggressive, some which is not, and there's this kind of developing story in the game where it's kind of like an AI versus possibly alien AI, possibly alien type thing going on, but it's all in the background. Essentially, it's you've got a little tool that allows you to mine for stuff and break stuff down and then turn it into other stuff using a various... So it starts off very basic. So you start off and you have to, you find maybe some iron ore. And you've got to keep hitting the iron ore to get enough iron ore to create something. That enough iron ore allows you to create a smelter, which allows you to turn iron ore into iron ingots, and then you can use those iron ingots to create something else. And then once you've done iron ingots, your AI says, "Oh, this is really good. We can do this." Now you need to go and find copper. And you do the same. You find copper. You can then create copper ingots. You can then start creating wires and other things, iron rods and all that. And then it all adds together to do other things, and all mixes together. And eventually you start building sort of bigger and better factories. The general idea is to sort of move along a path whereby you've got to send loads of stuff up to a space elevator to what looks like to rebuild a massive space station in space. Obviously, as you're in space, it'd be weird to have a space station on Earth or on the planet. It'd be just called a house.
Yeah, it would.
So yeah, you go through, and you do all these different things. What I really like about the game, what's really got me is, yes, there is a path it wants you to take. So you've got different tiers you need to complete to unlock new things. You've got like the things you need to feed into the space elevator to progress the game. But it allows you to do everything at your own pace, completely at your own pace. So if you want to beeline through it, go for it. If you want to spend time making a fancy factory just to make screws, for example, and then build up walls and make it look really beautiful, you can do that. You start off by doing everything on foot, but then you can unlock like transport. You can do sort of like trains. There's tractors, trucks for doing massive transport, logistics and stuff like that. Really, really good. But in many ways as well. So you've got the main building type stuff, which I really like, and it's like making your factories. It is so satisfying, but there's also an exploration to it. So the map is massive. It's like 4 biomes within the map, and each biome is massive as well. And it encourages you to go and explore. And what it does, it doesn't stop you doing anything. So I was exploring and I found uranium. I've still got no use for uranium. I don't know what I can use it for, but I can't get close to it because it gives off radiation. So I'm guessing at some point I'll get like a radiation suit so I can get near it. But at another point I found quartz. I was like, I don't know how to use quartz yet. So I took some anyway, which is all good. And then later on you go, right, that's how I use it. So it doesn't discourage you from going places and doing things. But at the same time, you're kind of not stuck in your biome, but it's very difficult to get out of your starting biome. So you then get other tools, like you walk really slowly, but you can create blade runners, which allow you to move faster, jump higher, that kind of thing. But then you get a parachute, so you can fall greater distances, or you get a jetpack, so you can use that to get further distances, and there's more and more you unlock as you go, like gas masks, so you're not as like worried about you're not getting hit by some of the gases given off by some of the flora. You get grenade type things you can unlock, so you can get rid of like rocky areas and stuff like that. So in many ways as well, it's also a bit of a Metroidvania type feel to things, but without actually being a Metroidvania. I mean, I'm currently like 90 hours in and I've barely scratched the surface. And I'm at the moment planning my next bit, which involves tearing down 70 hours worth of work because I want to, because I've got a new idea.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those games where, when I first played it, I went, I don't know, this looks difficult. I don't know if I'll get on with it at all. So then I just totally enamoured with it. And we was talking about before Game of the Year potential, I think, off air. For me, this is swooped in, and this could be one of them, if not it, because it is just everything at this stage in life that I want in a game. It allows me to do what I want to do. It's not pressuring me, but it's still guiding me to some degree. It is absolutely wonderfully outstanding.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah. I got the impression it was going to be right up there for you after all you've been playing of it. I think you've probably put over 40 hours into it now, haven't you? Probably quite a lot more than that even.
90.
Oh, wow. That'll do.
Yeah, it's coming into one of my top played for the last couple of years, actually.
Yeah, it must be.
I think the only one, actually, I'll tell you now, because what you've actually got on Steam is a great thing. So Balatro, Persona 5 Royal, Slay the Spire, Transport Fever, and Cyberpunk are the only ones that are above it so far.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, they're all like 90 to 100 plus hours. So no.
Yeah. That's a huge time investment. Well, that's it though. There's a kind of there's only a handful that really do that, and then you just click. It's impressive to see Cyberpunk up there with it being a narrative game. Mine was about the same. I think mine was around 100 hours in the end. It was crazy.
And it never got boring, did it, that game either?
No, not at all.
That's a testament to, I think, a really good game. That the stories that were revealed, you're like, oh, okay. And you could play it in chunks and everything. So, yeah. But, yeah, no, Satisfactory, it's so good. I've got other games I've got to play, but I've been too ill to give them attention to. So, but I love transport, like logistic-based games anyway. I think I've said I like Transport Fever 2 is one of mine that I played that for tons and tons of hours. I wouldn't mind that had its final updates. I might be tempted to go back to that at some point. But I love those games where you've just got to figure things out now. I look at stuff like the big new adventure games and the big new shooter games where I used to be interested. I'm just not anymore. I just there's too much energy for those. If I'm too slow, someone's going to ruin my game. If it's a team-based one, I'm going to ruin their game. I can't be asked with that pressure.
Yeah. It's a young man's game.
Yes, definitely. But yeah, no, for me, yeah, this is brilliant. I highly recommend it to anyone. Many people might even have it already if you've done Humble Bundle stuff. I believe it was given out in a Humble Bundle at one point. I think I somehow owned this twice because I think I must have got my version in a Humble Bundle because I bought it initially to try it on Epic because it was exclusive there for a very short while as well. But yeah, I don't even think it's that expensive out the box. 30 quid. It's not bad, actually.
Yeah.
It's it's one of those. If you're into these, yeah, you're going to be all over it. If you're not, it might be one you're going, maybe in a deal or a bundle. But if you've got any interest in this, you will be absolutely hooked.
Marvellous.
But yeah, that's it for me because I've been under the weather mentally and physically. So I'm going to go back to bed for a bit, Stu.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. If I didn't have work, I would be doing the same, but I do, because capitalism. But yeah, there you go.
Some of us aren't lazy layabouts.
Nah, not at all. So yeah, I mean, as usual, we'll come back next week. We'll hopefully be in a better place and hopefully be able to do something more substantial for you. But I think, we covered what we've been playing quite well. We've been enthusiastic about it, so that's good. But yeah, life can be a challenge, and we want to be honest when things are difficult. Don't want to cover it up. So yeah, hope that's accepted the way it's intended. So yeah, until next week then, as usual, follow us on all the socials, join us on Discord to chat if you fancy it, and until next time, stay safe and stay sane.